Back in 2011, Nikon underwhelmed the world with the release of its Nikon 1 series. This was a line of mirrorless interchangeable lens cameras with a 1-inch sensor. Now, the 1 series never really took off. As a matter of fact, it was discontinued back in 2018, but what that means is you can find them pretty cheap nowadays. This particular camera, the Nikon S1, currently sells body only for only $50, and you can find a kit lens for $30. That's an entire camera setup for 80 bucks. So what do you get with the Nikon S1? Well, there's a 10 megapixel 1-inch sensor, a 460K LCD screen, and phase detect autofocus, which, spoiler alert, is actually pretty good. The build quality of the S1 is pretty good. It's a nice, sleek design without a whole lot of buttons. You've got a power button, a shutter button, and a record button on the top, and they all sit kind of flush so that it's smooth and even along that surface. On the back, you've got a play button, a menu button, a delete button, and a scroll wheel, and that's pretty much it. Now, in terms of the LCD screen, it's not a touch screen, and it doesn't articulate in any way, shape, or form. And one other bummer is there's no microphone input on this camera. But you can always work around that with something like an external recorder, or even just like a $12 lav mic from Amazon, and just record your audio straight into your phone. And speaking of which, the onboard audio on the S1 is actually pretty decent. In terms of video, you've got 1080p at 30 frames per second and 60 frames per second. Now, unfortunately, 60p isn't 60 progressive, it's actually 60 interlaced. But overall, the image quality coming from the Nikon S1 actually looks pretty good. Another thing that I really like about the Nikon S1 is when it came to entry-level cameras of this era, so many of them didn't have manual controls in video mode. For example, I've reviewed like a bunch of Panasonic cameras on this channel. The GF2, the G3, the G5. All of those were full auto for video mode. You had no control over your recording whatsoever. Nikon S1 gives you full manual control over your video mode. But I mean, you also have like your same aperture priority, shutter priority, and program mode. And it's completely customizable too. I mean, you can set it up, for example, to shoot aperture priority just for photography and then full manual for video. And it's so easy to just click back and forth between those two. It just kind of shows like Nikon was actually a little bit ahead of its time with this little Nikon S1. You know, another aspect where the S1 is surprisingly good is image stabilization. If you look in the camera, Nikon has a mode called vibration reduction, and your choices are normal and active. I've been filming all of my vlogging segments with active, and it's pretty damn good, actually. This is a test of the image stabilization, just a regular like walk and talk test. This is basically if you were vlogging every day. I'm not using a tripod or anything like that. I'm actually just filming handheld. This is basically the kind of stabilization you would expect if you were vlogging with this camera. Another area where the S1 performs better than you would expect is autofocus. Autofocus on the S1 has phase detect, but what really surprised me about this is most cameras from this era, and you can spot it right away, they have that obnoxious thing where it pulses to the background and then jumps back to the foreground before it finds the subject. It's so easy to spot cameras from 2011 to 2013 because they all have that obnoxious autofocus. The S1 autofocuses like a modern camera. It just sort of glides right to the subject and then locks in. That really surprises me. I wasn't expecting that from a 7-year-old camera. So overall, the Nikon S1 is kind of like a hidden gem. You know, it's one of those cameras that everyone forgot about because no one was interested in it in the first place. Meanwhile, you actually have some pretty decent, relatively modern features, all in a camera that costs literally $80. You know, you may be missing some modern features like 4K, mic input, or an articulating screen, but at the same time, you've got really good looking 1080p, you've got customizable picture profiles, you have full manual mode, you have reliable autofocus, and you have really good image stabilization, all for under $100. I mean, in that sense, Should you buy the Nikon S1 for vlogging? Sure, why not? It's literally just 50 bucks for a camera body, another 30 bucks for a lens. That's crazy cheap. Like, you're not gonna find that kind of bargain anywhere else nowadays. Anyway, I think that's all I've got for today, guys. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again next time.